Hello, wonderful people. Welcome to season 2 of Growing Up Congolese. I am so excited for this season. Um, it's a new year, although I'm recording this in December, but let's pretend it's a new year. Welcome, happy new year. All the wealth wishes. I wish you guys health, joy, love, peace. I wish you guys understanding. I wish you guys money, just I wish that you succeed in everything that you set your mind to. Follow your dreams, work hard. Thank you so much for being with me. Thank you for being on this ride with me. Even though I have not been posting, like, you guys are constantly listening. I'm getting new listeners, I'm getting new countries hopping in on this crazy this crazy channel podcast series. So thank you guys. I'm blessed. I'm honestly blessed. Sometimes I don't like a lot of stuff happen, and I react so much to the negative things that I don't even pay attention to realize how blessed I am. So this is one of the blessings that I have, this community, this podcast. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. Please don't forget that I also have a travel blog, See the World, CYTHE world.com. See the World is a travel blog where I talk about traveling. Over the holiday season, I've been doing Christmas inspired content. So, like, how to celebrate the holidays as a single person. I've been single my whole life, so I can tell you how. Solo traveling during the holiday season, best places to celebrate the holidays in the United States. So I've been just holiday content, so please check it out. I will be moving to DC soon, like in the next 6 weeks. By God's grace, I will be moving to DC. So I have been creating content both on this podcast and on my blog, so that when I move to DC and I am focusing on just going to the ups and downs of moving to a new place and everything, that content is still be given to you. For this season, for this new year, I am promising to be consistent. And based on the algorithm and everything, I've decided that I'll be posting once a week every Monday. So once a week every Monday, you'll be getting a new podcast from me throughout the year of 2024. That's why I'm creating so much content, so that I can schedule it for every Monday starting January 15th. So if you're listening to this is January 15th already. So yeah. So let's get to the topic of today. I have been interested in the theme of identity, for a while, right? And I think before I started working, from the academic perspective on identity and all of that, I always felt like I always had questions in the back of my head about identity, right? What is identity? What makes a Congolese a Congolese? What makes an American American? What makes a girl, right? Because sometimes there's words that we hear, or there's phrases that we hear. Act like a girl. What does that mean? Trust me, I've heard that so many times. Oh, act like a black girl. What does that mean? I literally went on a date. This dude told me to act like a black girl. He's like, oh, you're white. And I'm like, what the hell does that mean, right? And I've been called white since I moved to the United States. I've been white, right? For my African friends, I've been Americanized, I've been westernized. So, but what does that mean? Where does identity come from, right? I've always been interested in that, because my whole life I've always had to explain myself. When I introduce myself, people be like, what are you? That was the first question I was asked when we moved to the United States. When we went to the Social Security office to do our paperwork, the woman asked us, what are we? What race? And we were like, what the hell is that, right? Because we are not from a place where we do race as a check, we don't check off race. So it was interesting to be in this place, being like, oh, they have a new way of identifying people, right? And so when I was in college and it was my senior year project, I've decided to delve upon identity, because I always felt misunderstood. I've always felt never enough. I've never felt like I belong to anything because my identity never made sense to people. So I read this guy, this French guy. His name was Daniel Calin. He wrote this piece, and the reason why I don't have my scholarly work is because all of the work that I've done during my undergrad and my graduate degree were under my university email address, and now it has been disconnected, so I have lost a lot of work that I've done. So this so I'm literally speaking from memory and from, so bear with me. So he talked about, and this was the first time that I've heard about subjectivity, and Foucault talks about subjectivity as well. I think he brought up the idea of subjectivity. He talks about identity is objective until the person makes it subjective. Let me say that again. Identity is objective until a person makes it subjective. So what does that mean, right? So when we are born to a certain family, being Congolese, like the Congolese identity is objective. The American identity is objective. Being like a girl identity is objective. Woman is objective. Being French is objective, and all that, right? However, when you ask a person what makes them French, or how they have recognized that they're French or they're American, that takes a personal journey. The way I identify my Americanism is very different than the way that another person identifies their Americanism. The way I identify my Congoleseism is very different than another person. Although I'm Congolese, I've never really felt fully Congolese. I've never been to the Congo. When I speak Lingala, people who are born and raised in the Congo would tell me I have an accent, right? I am related and detached at the same time to the Congolese identity, which is the same thing as my American identity. We moved to the United States when I was 9 years old. So from 9 to 26, I've lived in America. However, those previous 9 years that I've not lived in America has sort of like made me feel like sometimes I belong and sometimes I don't belong. Because I have a vivid recollection of migrating to the United States, whereas somebody who's born here does not, right? Like, I've had this experience with different refugees group, right? So I've told you guys, I grew up in a refugee camp for the first 7 years of my life. And for me, like, we had a normal life. We had a house, we had a place, we went to school. Yes, some days we did not eat. Yes, some days there was no water and everything, but bougie African mama made it work and everything. And in July 2023, I visited a refugee camp in Greece, and I was like, what the fuck? That was literally, I was like, these people were living in containers. Like, they've transformed containers into like 6 bedroom living spaces with kitchen. It was off like by the mountains. It was gated. It was policed, heavily policed and everything. And I'm like, oh Lord, my refugee experience and this refugee experience is different, right? So I cannot come and be like, oh, we are all I was just like, oh shit, no, we're not. We are not on the same boat, right? Just like immigrants, right? Italian immigrants, Irish immigrants are very different than black immigrants because they are not facing the same thing. Like, I remember when I was in college and they were talking about DACA and all of that. I cannot even talk about, like, a friend of mine told me, I remember I used to have this friend, she was an adoptee, and she was talking about, like, oh, like, like, I should be considered an immigrant too. And theoretically, I was like, yeah, right? But the way you got in here versus the way a kid coming from El Salvador is different, right? So when in the United States, most of the time when we talk about the migration crisis, although it's so misleading, because a lot of people who do not have papers are actually white because they have overstayed the visa. They came in legally, they just overstayed the visa. Like, but most of the time when we talk about the migration crisis, we usually look at the southern border, right? And so because even me, I don't fit the narrative of the southern border. So sometimes when I'm gonna talk about like the immigrant experience, I have to be cognitive of like the discussion and the general discussion that is happening and my own history. Yes, I'm an immigrant, but I moved to the United States legally, right? I came here, or my family and I came here with the mentality that this was going to be a home. We came in here legally. We did not have to go through the border and present ourselves and all of that. We were given the right to come here. We were invited by the United States to come here. Does that make sense? So, yes, our objective identity is immigrant, American, Congolese. But then what does that mean? What does that mean? What does it mean to be an American? I started being, because as somebody who never really felt truly American, I started experiencing being American when I went abroad, right? Because when I went abroad, there was just some stuff I'm just like, we don't do this back home. And then I was like, shit, I called America home. This was the first time I called. Like, I never called a place home before, right? Because again, we've moved around a lot. We've never stayed in one place, so I never called a place home before. So I believe it was like, well, when I was in China was a 5-week trip, so we didn't have like, it was, and then people were like, oh, the Americans are here, and it was like, oh, okay, cool, right? But it did not really hit me that like I was being seen as an American until I lived in France, right? And Lord, I went to political schools, and then people were attacking my American belief. I'm like, now I'm like, bitch, you guys know I'm black, right? I was like, the shit that you are arguing about, we fighting for the same stuff. Like, leave me alone, right? Because it was just like, what the hell are you guys mad at me for? Like, I'm black, So then, but then it's funny how like, it's funny how we sometimes associate and disassociate with certain type of identities, and that is actually a form of subjectivity, right? Because you can think of subjectivity as maybe when they talk about an American identity, like, so for example, when I go to Europe and people are like, oh, you're an American, so like, and I made a couple of friends, they always want to take me to a McDonald's or a Burger King and everything, and then I'm just like, I've never had a hamburger in my entire life. From the age of 9 till 26, I've never had a hamburger. And they're like, but you're an American, right? So for them, like, hamburger is synonymous to an American. So all Americans eat hamburger, right? But it's like, no. So how do I identify, like, how has I created my American identity, or how has I relate to the American identity? I've related to it to maybe culture, to the way we dressed, to the way that we speak, to maybe our flamboyant way. I'm from the East Coast. I say it like you mean it, right? Mean what you say what you mean, right? And I remember when I was living in Belgium, that there was this wonderful like stores and everything. It was at the city center, and there was this Italian shop, and the Italian shop had like, nice tailored pants and suits and shoes and everything. And then next to it was like the American, like the store was called the American, and it was sweatpants, and I was so offended, but I realized I was wearing leggings, and I was like, that's my American subjectivity, right? That's just like, that's my American identity, right? How I was able to kind of like present how I can sometimes relate to the American identity, right? There's this thing where people from around the world think like Americans are stupid, they don't know anything about like anybody, they don't care about most people in the world and everything. And as a foreigner, yeah, I felt that too. But as an American, I was like I was at this event where I was welcoming foreigners to the country, and like it was a conference tailored to them, and my game was to guess the capitals of the country. So if somebody from Chad came, I'd be like Jamina. They'd be like, "How do you know that? Like Americans don't know anything about us." And I'd be like, and then they'd be like, "Oh, okay, I get it, right?" And then when this guy came and he was from Kazakhstan, and I was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna play the dumb American stereotype, and everybody started laughing, right? Because our identities fluctuates because we are people, right? And then subjectivity looks at identity from a personal perspective. It doesn't look at the general social construct of identity. That is that's an objective identity, right? Your nationhood, your nationality, the gender, all of that, they're socially constructed. And I would like to argue that not only that our objective identity is socially constructed, but they are also politically constructed, right? When I traveled to Europe, I realized this, that when I traveled to Europe, subconsciously, in Europe, I see myself as an African. I see myself as an African. So when a white European says something ish to me, I feel slighted, right? I feel like there's an undertone, right? Because in Europe, Black Europeans, they don't, in a way, they don't kind of have the luxury of Black Americans, because in America, you can say that America does not belong to anybody. Everyone can be an American. Whereas in Europe, in France, you have to become French. And a Black person with Black skin does not have the luxury to become French in a way. So it kind of makes them still be an African in a political sense, right? Unless they win the World Cup, then they become French, right? Or they're seen as French. You know what? We're not going to get there, but that's going to be one of an episode that we will talk about, right? So in America, although I'm a Black American, although I am an African immigrant to the United States, I have the luxury to say I'm American. Now some people be like, but you have an accent, blah 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 blah, and I would tell them you have an accent too, and then conversation is over, right? But in France, when I've traveled, I remember subconsciously I was like, oh yeah, here, unless I speak English or unless I show them my passport, like, although it wasn't, and I think it's what I thought, or it's how I viewed myself because of what I study, right? I've studied political science, I studied development, I study like international relations. So I think sometimes we project, which is something that I'm also going to talk about in one episode that I'm preparing, I'm going to talk about. But I remember there was this incident in Belgium, and there was this older couple that got into that entered the bus. And when I saw them, these people looked like they are 2 days away from death, right? They were old. So when I saw them, my stop was going to be next anyway. So I decided to stand up and give them a seat. That 3 minute ride from when they sat down to when I got off, these people were just staring at me. They were just like in my face, staring at me. And I was like, what the hell are they staring at me for? Because for me, I did it like out of respect, right? I did it. You are an elder. I'm a young person. I'm 23, right? So like I can stand up. You look like you're about to die, right? And B, my stop is next. So for me, it was like, of course, right? But the way they looked at me was like, For some reason, I just picture and again, it may be far-fetched, but just like the way they looked at me, they made me feel like, yeah, this Negro girl was supposed to get up, well, she understood her assignments. Because I swear to God, there was no, It was a 3 minute ride. These people were just, and you know when people are staring at you, and you kind of be like, do I have something on my face? That those type of stares, and you were just like, what the fuck are they looking at, right? But then when I remember getting out of there and feel like, did I just play it into a stereotype? Did I just like play it into like a racial relation? Like why were they looking at me for? Right? Like why? Right? So again, when I go to Europe, I'm like subconsciously I'm like, oh yeah, here like I'm an African. Here when they see something about like immigrants, it hits harder than when they say something about immigrants in the United States, because I know they're not talking about my type of immigrant, right? And it's sort of like, how do we detach, like where does one identity stop and where does another one begin? And and then it's funny because my mother and I went to Italy earlier this year, and I remember paying. We went to a coffee shop in Rome, and my mother's like, my mom was African. She's every time she goes somewhere, she has to ask for the price, and I'm just like, Mom, stop doing that. And I told her, my mom, if you do that again, we are black, and in these spaces, when you do that, they look at it as you being a cheap person. You don't want to come off as. One thing I don't like to do is to listen. I told you guys 10,000 times. I'm a Congolese. We are prideful. We don't do that, right? Like, I don't want to come off as cheap. I don't want to come off as poor and everything. So it ends the coffee shop. How expensive it's gonna be? My mom likes to ask for the price for anything, and I'm just like, ugh, the old school stuff like nags me, right? And then so I go and I pay for the things, and I only had like a 100 euro with me. And again, I've lived in Europe so many times. I know that you are not supposed to have big bills with you and stuff like that. And then so when I gave the woman the bill, she takes it, and then she's like, and then she, she takes some markers to check that it's real and everything. And I know that's protocol. I've lived there. I know that. And then she's like, where are you from? I'm like, America. She's like, that's why your bill is real. And I was like, and the mom was like, why did she say that? And I'm just like, and I had to explain to my mom, I'm like, yeah, Mom, like, look here, we've been walking around this city. How many black people have you seen in the places that we've been to, right? Again, we went to the bougie stuff, right? We went to the, my mama and I were bougie shoppers, right? We went to the bougie stuff. How many black people have we seen, right? And again, does it make it right? No. But is it the reality that we lived in because of the labels that are put on us, or because of, like, again, and I think labeling is where the political takes its course, right? It's where the political takes its power, right? Because if you label someone as black, then there's this understanding that a black person is poor, a black person is this, a black person is that. Sorry, my phone fell right in my hand. A black person is this, is that. So us being in Rome, in the expensive places, and being able to carry real bills in their minds is like, yeah, they can understand that as you being a rich black person from America. And when people see black people traveling to the, the exclusive places, they be like, oh yeah, so you must be rich. You must be like, famous. You must be doing something. I remember experiencing that in China. People be like, oh, like, are you related to like a basketball player? Are you related to an athlete and all that? Because in their heads, the rich black people that they see that has traveled, or the black people that have traveled to their places are rich. They can afford to do it. They're not on the street. They're not poor, right? Because also the black people that lives in their countries, they don't go to those places. I have cousins who are born in Paris, who are born in France. And when I went there, I was just like, hey, can we go see the Eiffel Tower? They were like, for what? Like, can we go to Versailles? For what? Right? So it's like, they don't travel. Like, I met a girl in Champagne. Yeah, Champagne. No, it wasn't Champagne. Oh, I keep forgetting. But it was like 35 minutes away from Paris. And I slept over like at a acquaintance house, and I was going back to Paris to take my train to go back to the city where I lived. And this girl was like, hey, are you going to Paris? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to Paris. She's like, oh, can you show me how to take the metro? I'm like, oh, what country are you from? She's like, oh no, I'm from here. I'm like, excuse me? She's like, yeah, I'm from here. I'm born and raised here, but I've never been to Paris. I'm like, you never been to Paris? It's 35 minutes away by train, right? So you have people who have never left their little towns in their own country who happens to be the same color as you. So when they see you, of course they expect you to either be a foreigner and a foreign rich person. So can I say that it's racism like all the time? I mean, I don't know, right? Again, as a social scientist, I kind of like try to understand human behavior and kind of like, understand it. Do I agree with all of it? But for me, it's like I have to understand the root of the problem before I label something, right? And I think with identities and labeling, it does just the surface level thing. Objective identity is just a surface level. But with subjectivity, and even when we look at things from a subjective perspective, right? That woman who was like, oh, you're an American, that's why your bill is real. From a subjective perspective, I have to understand like she doesn't see a lot of black people in this part in this part of towns. In the tourist section that we went to, my mom was like, Cynthia, we are the only black person here. I'm like, yep. And the only reason my mama went there because my white ass wanted to go, right? And again, look at what I just did. I called myself white because I like certain type of stuff. And again, that's because those been the labels that people have given me, because they'd be like, Cynthia, you like white things, or you like to do white people stuff, right? So, and I think this season, every topic I'm going to talk about, I'm going to use it to the background of identity, because identity, whether objective or subjective, allows us, like, help us shape our mentality, right? Help us shape our views, right? So, for example, as a black person or as an African, watching 5 billionaire go down the Titanic, I felt no ways tired. I felt not, I did, hell, I don't, I did not, my first thought was not even like sadness at all. It was like, this is the stupidest shit I've ever seen in my life, right? And again, why did I respond that way? Versus how I respond to the 600 people who died on the Aegean Sea in Greece around the same time, right? Those people were African, so I can relate to that. Those people were like, so you see how like our identity, whether it is subjective or objective, influence how we view things, influence how we consume things. That's why even the media likes to place on our identity. Identity was the driving force of a lot of atrocities that we see around the world. Right? So yes, so this season is going to be fun. I just wanted to give you this intro because we're going to have a lot to talk about. And I'm just so excited to mix just my upbringing and the stuff that I study into this season. So I'm excited. Sit tight, enjoy the ride, and welcome to the new season of Growing Up Congolese. Bye!